Before we get into the action from last night, there was some big news in the NHL today, and that is Thatcher Demko is not going to play tonight for the Vancouver Canucks in Game 2 of their series against the Nashville Predators, and depending on who you listen to, it is unlikely he will play against the Nashville Predators at all in this series. And that is just so unfortunate from a Vancouver standpoint, which look, I'm not breaking news to anyone. Oh, wow, the goalie being hurt is devastating. Shock. We're really altering the genre here as we get into year 3 of Couch Potato Diary. But this, it just is such a bummer because this Vancouver team, I think, has great potential. You look at, especially the top 3 lines they have that they can roll out there can be so dangerous. And you have Quinn Hughes, who has turned into a bona fide star on that blue line, and you have Thatcher Demko, who has been the rock for this team for several years and has now got a opportunity to show that on the biggest stage this sport offers. And it sucks that goes away after one game. What does it mean for Vancouver? In this series, there is the potential that it means nothing. Casey DeSmith, as far as backup goalies go, is fine. There's not going to be a goalie controversy after this in Vancouver. I think far from it. If he raises his trade value, then they could flip him for a third. I think they would be dancing in the streets of Vancouver. But he is good enough that I think he can keep this Vancouver team in it. A lot of people pointed out he has come in injury relief before in a game where he himself then got injured. And he's played well against the Predators. He is at his peak fine. And so he needs to be fine, right? There is a world where he is just a tire fire and they're hooped. And there's a world where Seelovs comes in and he's a tire fire and this team is just screwed, right? There's that is obviously in the range of possibilities. One of them is, oh, we're screwed. But he is good enough that I think this team can still get by Nashville. I said in Buy Sell yesterday that I am buying that Vancouver just has a significant talent edge over the Predators. Now, obviously, without Thatcher Demko, that shrinks a touch, but only a touch. I still think, the forward groups, it ain't close. The Preds have Nyquist, Forsberg, and about it. I'm obviously being hyperbolic here. Nashville has some quality hockey players, but just I don't think that forward group stacks up to anything Vancouver does, and I don't think anything on the blue line. Roman Josi is excellent, but I'll take Quinn Hughes, and then after that, it kind of stacks up in Vancouver's favor. So I still think the Canucks have the edge in this series, but it does kind of bring down the margin for error a little bit. They don't have as much wiggle room now. They do have to be a little bit more refined, and they need to play more than 12 good seconds to go out and win this game. But this is something that Rick Tocchet has been preparing his team for all season long. Probably not under the guise of, hey, Thatcher Demko may blow out at some point, so we're going to have this structure. But Rick Tocchet, for the flaws that I thought he had coming in, one thing I think he has done an amazing job with is getting this team ready for getting this team ready for this type of a situation, getting this team ready for these type of games, playoff type games, when things are going crazy and the arena's going nuts, and all of a sudden Casey DeSmith is back in goal and no one really knows why. I'm hoping the players do, but no one really knows why there's that guy back in net, and everything's going nuts, and the Preds are pressing, and all of a sudden you're looking down a 1-1 series tie going to Nashville. You can fall back on your systems. And Rick Tocchet has been preaching that all season long, and this is why. It's not so that they can put on a sterling defensive performance against the Columbus Blue Jackets on a Wednesday night in January. It's so that when shit goes sideways, you know what you can fall back on, right? We talk about this is quite the corollary we're drawing here, but what we talk about with mental health, right? When everything is just spiraling, one of the things that I at least have been taught is make a list. And these are the things you want to get done in the day, and maybe a couple of side quests of hey, here's why I think you're awesome. And you just go back to that when everything's spiraling, okay, let's just do this and see if we can settle things down. And that is where the Vancouver Canucks are now with their systems and with what they've been doing all season long. This is now the spiral time, and this is where you need to fall back on those. Rick Tocchet has coached his ass off, and he has got his team ready for this situation. So I would still pick the Vancouver Canucks today to win this series over the Nashville Predators. Now, I'm doing this at 4 o'clock Mountain Time. That game is in 4 hours. Maybe I'll be proven wrong by the time that game wraps up. But for right now, I still feel like Vancouver has the edge in this series. If this is going to be an extended layoff, then that's where it becomes a problem. They don't have a snowball's chance in hell of beating Edmonton if Thatcher Demko isn't A, in net, and B, Superman. So they're going to need him. If this team is going to reach the full potential that I think they have, and again, range of outcomes, one of the range of outcomes for the Vancouver Canucks is they win the Stanley Cup. That is how good this team is. Not without Thatcher Demko, though. So that, for right now, you can fix this. You can super glue this problem together. You just need that guy to come back very soon, though. Shifting over to what we saw last night, Austin Matthews has finally had his moment. He has obviously had several moments before, right? But this is the playoffs are when these moments really matter, and when these moments actually get remembered. And you couldn't very much argue that the first round isn't even that. But for him and for this team to get that goal at that time, to break the tie with 7.5 minutes to go in game 2, stare an 0-2 right in the face. Because I don't know if anyone is believing that the Leafs will get puck luck in overtime and beat Boston. So Toronto, facing that type of adversity, getting just shelled in game 1 and coming out and playing pretty well and bouncing back and having your talent leader come out there and get that goal, it is a huge moment for them. And now it is up to the Leafs what they want to make that moment mean. Is that moment you see the Blue Jays hat on me, is this moment the Robbie Alomar home run against Oakland in 92, where that they have been stumbling in big games throughout their recent history? And now all of a sudden, one of your guys has busted through against the big bad Bruins, or Dennis Eckersley, and now you feel like you can do anything. Or is this 2016 Edwin Encarnacion hitting a walk-off home run against Baltimore, where, yeah, it's cool, it's a great moment, but it also eventually led to this team losing in 5 in the American League Championship Series. So what does this moment mean? Is this one of the galvanizing moments that carries this team to a new level and shapes the future of this franchise? Because if this series doesn't go well, I think there are foundational changes happening in Toronto. So that's all that's on the line when Austin Matthews is scoring that goal to even this series up at 1. It is now up to Toronto how they respond with this to see how this moment will be remembered. And one of the players who I think had a big hand in that last night was Ilya Samsonov, who comes out and has such an improved game from what we saw from him in game 1, where it was rough. Not everything was his fault, but anything that wasn't, or that was his fault, could have very easily been stopped. And I thought he adjusted so effectively against Boston and didn't let any of that get to him. And I thought he was really, really good in this game. Do I think Toronto beats Boston off of this? I do not still. But that went from 100% to 85. Just based off of that. But now what does this moment mean? And how do you turn it into something bigger if you are the Toronto Maple Leafs? I was on Game Over Edmonton last night, breaking down the Oilers win over the LA Kings. So if you want about half an hour of my thoughts on that game, go over to the Game Over network and check that one out. But just a couple Coles notes here. Connor McDavid's quite good. That top line is insane. And I said last night, adding Henrique to that line really is a nice wrinkle, because you can't just clog the front of the net and try to take away the Hyman goals. You're never going to take away McDavid, but try to take away some of that stuff and really lock that down, because if you kind of bog down there, Henrique's got a shot that, to steal the basketball term, he can score from distance. So you have to be wary of him as well. So it spaces things out really well for Edmonton, and I thought they did a good job of taking advantage of some openings. Now, the Kings left everything open. They were puck watching like you wouldn't believe last night and leaving backdoor passes wide open. And Edmonton recognized this. Hyman has a great offensive sense, took advantage of that, and was able to capitalize. Draisaitl had a really good play in front where they kind of did a bunch formation in front of the goal. He goes to the front of the net. The defense kind of sinks back to him a little bit, and then he pops back out. No one really follows him. The both defenders stay kind of in that slot area, and he is wide open. It's a tough angle, but I bet he's practiced that about 1 billion times, and he goes top shelf putting that one away. This Edmonton team, I don't think, should have any problem putting away the LA Kings for the rest of this series. 4 or 5 games is what I think this will go. The Kings are just not in this class, and they looked at last night. Like, defensively, they were atrocious. Pierre-Luc Dubois had just an abysmal hockey game, and Drew Doughty got worked a few times. Now, many defensemen gets worked by the Edmonton Oilers, but he looked particularly bad last night, as did most of the Kings. The Oilers basically came in there and took their lunch money.